Madge, I remember him coming back going, Madge, I can't do this in Origin. Glass houses. I felt that I'm going to stick up for us. Yeah, that's a really good question, Coop. Just get Matty down, because I needed a little bit of weight of numbers.
The siren sounds, the Shield's heading back to Sydney.
Hey, Madge, good to have you here, mate. You're in the old place around the corner.
Yes. Yep.
We've become these wankers that buy a house around the corner and just move, you know.
I think we probably had to get away from that place with the memories we had there.
But, we did. You and Bellyache?
Yes,
yeah.
That was a long time ago. That would have been nearly 14 years ago.
I'll tell you what it was, Madge. It was, you had just been beaten 40-0 by Manly.
Yeah.
You went away on a fact-finding mission.
You're spot on.
To Boston.
Yeah.
And you were in Boston when the Red Sox won first World Series 100 years.
Yeah, it was. It was incredible. The streets were absolutely madness. It was a great time to be over there. But we did a bit of a fact-finding mission, and obviously came back to your palace.
Yeah,
and did a bit of fact finding at your in your lounge room, I think it was.
It was funny. We were knocking them down. Bellyache is, you're a very disciplined man. But Bellyache was sitting there. He's had 2 beers and that was it. And me and Madge, we basically we found the bottom of the bottle a few times.
We did.
Playing music through the glass. Did you just do on that? That's what Dad used to do. Madge, he used to, because he never knew how to work a speaker, Bluetooth, so he used to just find a cup and then he'd put his iPhone in the cup to try to amplify the music.
I think you were still using cassettes back then.
It was, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then Trish kicked us off the bed.
Yeah. Hey, Madge, we'll start with a bit of State of Origin stuff. State of Origin for players, it's next level as far as pressure's concerned. What about as a coach?
Yeah, Matty, I've obviously... for a long time, I've wanted to do it, and I've been in the coaching game for a long time. The enormity of Origin is exactly what everyone talks about. I've always wanted to be in the arena, and obviously had the opportunity to coach, and it was unreal. Albeit it's all about a result, but just the whole build-up, creating a campaign, getting the players together, getting a staff together. New South Wales are very, they allowed me to basically bring in the people that I wanted, which was really good. We had an exceptional group of staff. The playing group all bought in off many different conversations that we had. So I guess when you talk about the pressure and things like that, I actually had so many great people around in that space. I guess it takes away a lot of that.
How different is it preparing for coaching a full NRL season as opposed to that 6 weeks block of State of Origin?
It is different, Coop. Like you're basically in an Origin campaign, you've got the best of the best. When you're coaching an NRL campaign, you've got probably 5 to maybe 10 of the players that are the superstars of your team, and then you've got the next level down that are developing, and they're trying to get to the next level. Whereas
and the next level down, then
right.
Cuba.
Yeah. Well, you said that.
Thanks, mate.
So you are coaching the best. So allowing those players, you just got to make sure you don't get in the way. You've got a little bit of a plan, and you share that with the players, and the level of conversations that you have with the players at their next level. You go, boys, this is what I'd like to do. And they'll have the conversation, and they actually go and do it. Whereas when you're at sort of Clubland, you're probably taking 2 or 3 weeks to potentially get to where you want to get to. So you can fast track things really quickly when you've got the best players. And they've been through all the ups and downs of what it might take to get to an NRL player. They're now at the highest level. And what you've got when you're coaching at that level is that you don't have a lot of the peripheral issues that are going on around the club. The salary caps, the various noises within your club, where the club sits. You're basically walking in, you've got a clean slate and away. Here we go. So coaching at that level, mate, I really enjoyed it. Albeit I still really enjoy the other side of it, with the NRL stuff. But when you get to coach at the highest level, it's a nice place.
Madge, a question for you, because it's human nature that the outcome of something dictates how you look back on it.
Yeah.
Tell me about the 2 weeks when you're 1-0 down.
Yeah. I was really calm, or I felt I was really calm, just because of the belief that I had in the group of men that I had and the staff, and just how we were evolving. I felt that the first week, obviously like any campaign, you walk in, you've got your first week, players are trying to work out how Madge goes about things, how your staff go about things. We're trying to work out how we play. So going into game 1, I still probably felt a little bit underdone knowing where we would be, because of the nature of it's our first time. When you go into Origin, you've only got 3 lots of 8 days. You don't have this long build-in. It's basically day 1, you've got to connect with everyone, obviously you've done a lot of work prior to going into the campaign itself, and then you go about, righto boys, this is how I'd like to see us play. They have their discussions, then you get it out in the field, and that does take a bit of time. But what I did see with the group, because a lot of them had been through various origins over periods of time, they did know each other.
Yeah.
So that connection was there, and we just tried to enhance what had been done in the past, and the way the players got about each other, I think that was the real enjoyment part.
One thing Queensland do, Madge, oftentimes is they win the narrative, which I think, it's very important to win that narrative. And the Maroons have the Queensland call, which is iconic for them. Glass houses will be, I think, and I kid you not, it's T-shirt worthy. I think that you'll start to see T-shirts. I think it will be a catch cry for New South Wales. And I know it sounds frivolous, it might sound far-fetched, but I think it really changed the narrative of the series. When you said that, Madge, was it strategic or it just happened?
It was actually the second part, but a lot that led to that was probably what put me into that space. The best way of explaining it was that, I've been watching Origin for such a long period of time. I had my own thoughts how, as a coach, I'd like to be in that space. But I wanted to make it very much more about us. Forever we're hearing about what the other states doing and what the Queensland are up to and things like that. So I completely just wanted to focus on ourselves. And, the situation happened there in their game one, and, I felt that, I'm going to stick up for us. It's our state, it's our people, and it's the players, and that's definitely something there that probably brought about the statement that I made, is that over the years, when teams are successful, they probably have their own narrative, and now it's about us building our narrative. And, this is just the start, and I know that, over the years, I went back and looked at the history of Origin teams, and through many of the great past players, I actually got a lot of information, I suppose you'd call it, about the success when New South Wales has been successful, when they've had their challenges, even back into the early 80s when Origin was sort of created. Greg Brentnell, Chrissy Mortimer, they told me and shared with me a lot of the stories around what actually happened early days. And it wasn't until 85 when, I guess, the boys came together in the Origin space in New South Wales, and that's when Steve Mortimer, in my mind, came to me about what it meant to him, what it meant to the people. And I've been able to talk to many of those players in that 85 team. And the passion and the love for what they did was something there that I wanted to try and reflect into what we do. And that to me is really when you're looking at moments in time of throughout that first game that, it just sort of came to me that, I'm going to stick up for my players just the same way as those boys did back then.
Well, imagine, I'll ask you this question. I'm not asking you to talk here about Billy specifically, because you and Billy came through together, had a great relationship with the Melbourne Storm. It's the first time I'd seen Billy really quite rattled by it, and it did have an effect. I've got no doubt. How's your relationship with Billy now? Did you just talk afterwards? Is it is it sweet?
It'll be fine. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, for me, I don't look at that side of it. I was doing what we required as a state, and what I felt is where the state is going with the team. We're building. We're still in the infancy. Of obviously, they've had the success, the boys, but the hunger and what I felt is something there that we've got to make sure that we take forward. And whoever's in the space that we're playing against, well, that's just part of it. For myself personally, I take a lot of that emotion away. Is that it's we're representing one great state with so many people, and it's 9 million plus people. So,
hey mate, you spoke about the connectedness before as a playing group, and I imagine that's a huge part of the short block, trying to get them connected and buying in together. How, when you're picking a team, how important, how much emphasis when you're picking that squad do you put on in terms of trying to pick a squad that you think is going to gel personality-wise?
Yeah, well, giving away a few secrets, but connection is the number one thing that I look for. You know, and you've got to look at the personalities that you're bringing in, and one thing I sort of stressed early days is that I want them to be playing well. Because that brings you confidence and belief about what you're doing. So you need to be playing well. And look, you know, every player that I brought in, you know, was at the peak of their game. You know, and I had to make a couple of changes, but every time those players walked in, I believe that they were at their best, and that connection then brings itself into the team. And it was something there that, you know, someone like Jake Trbojevic, you know, he is our leader. You know, he's one of the most passionate, nicest blokes you can find. So I actually looked to him and I said, mate, we need that to build a team as quickly as we can. You know, we don't have a lot of time to be able to, you know, think that, you know, it's just going to happen overnight. And I've got to say, the old boys, once again, they shared, you know, we had Benny Elias and Blocker, Chrissy Mortimer, Crusher, talk about how quickly that team came together in a short period of time, because I think they were only in camp for 4 days in '85. It's not like they had the 8 days that we had, and they had to come together. So it was actually great for the current crop to hear that from those older players, and they sort of talked about how the love that they have for their teammates back then. So it was pretty easy for me. I said, boys, have a look at this. How good is this?
Yeah. Madge, let's talk about some of the stuff that formed you as a coach and why you're here now. Canberra. You came through an era, the Green Machine era, phenomenal. I think one of the greatest eras in rugby league history. So you got blokes like, you got Sheens, you know, Meninga, you know, Ferner, Laurie Daly, you know,
Clyde,
Ricky Stewart, brother, Clyde Stewart, Walters, goes on and on and on. But Sheens in particular, I see Sheens. I think Sheens is one of the best coaches in rugby league history. This sort of gets a little bit lost around Bellyache and Wayne and whatnot. What did you learn from those players and Sheens?
Yeah. Oh, look, I was an 18-year-old. I landed with those players. So you only know what you know at the time. So, like anything, what you walk into is what you can become. So, to land with those players, turning up to training every day, that they had an expectation. You know, they expected that you had to win. You know, there was all those the training ethics. So you actually learn that. So the leadership of the organisation plays a massive part, which, you know, resonates down. And obviously Sheensy sets the platform, and then, you know, to watch Mal, Ricky, I mean, Gary Belcher was a big influence back then. So, you know, you had a lot of players that were playing Origin, international. So when you're learning off players like that as a young pup coming through, that's basically how I've learned what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Was Lazo there?
No, Lazo just left.
You're lucked in. Yeah, we used to get there with Origin camp. We'd go down, all Newcastle blokes in the car, and we'd all go, everyone would go, righto, imagine if so-and-so's got, imagine if he got Lazo. And, you know, one of the boys did, I forget who it was, and they went up to the room, and back in those days it was a double bed, single bed, and you used to, you know, toss the coin for it. And they walked in, and Lazo's just laying on the double bed. They went, I'll just leave him there. No, they said, we're going to toss for it. And he just went, off.
Don't upset the big B.
Yes, that's right.
I've actually got to know Lazo quite well over this last little period. You know, at a higher level, obviously through Canberra and things like that. And, you know, he was a competitor. I mean, he was one of the best front rowers that's played the game. But to hear him talk about the Origin and what it meant to him, it's the, you know, you get to find out about people at a deeper level when you sort of do a one-on-one with someone, and that's what I've been able to do with a lot of the older boys and even the current crop, where you just sit down with them and just talk footy. And yeah, it's a shame we probably don't do a little bit more of that. You know, especially as a coach now. That's something that I have done a lot of, but especially in this last 12 months where I've been able to actually get to know people at a higher level. You know, when you're talking about using Lazo as an example about what he's done and how he achieved it, and what, you know, it's a lot of sacrifice, and to, you know, win 4 grand finals, Origins, and all the other parts of the game that he's been excelled at. So yeah, it's
right. If you want to win a competition, you get Lazo.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like what you said. Well, you know, I was an 18-year-old walking into players like that. So they've won comps. So it's a bit like the, I guess, you know, you talk about my time there at Melbourne Storm, where prior to Cameron Smith and, you know, prior to Cooper Cronk, they had Twira Nikia, they had Lazo. So the platforms of that organisation, you know, have been set. You know, and then it's about upholding those things. And, you know, obviously when Bellyache landed, I'm sure that he looked back on a couple of those players, and the standards of that organisation just lifts, and then those young players come into that, and away it goes and evolves. And you've experienced that, Coop, haven't you?
Yeah.
Just, I'm curious, Madge. You went to Adelaide with the Adelaide Rams. And we gave up on Adelaide and moved out. It was too hard. But looking back on those things, geez, you just had some good results there. It was a strong side. Do you think if we hung out there and played the long game in Adelaide, do you think that could have been a Melbourne Storm? Could have had that sort of impact?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, one team town. They actually got right behind the team. I guess the thing that we probably needed at that time was a couple more senior players. Like, Melbourne, I guess, started with those names that I spoke about.
Lazo,
we had, and like the Mariners fell apart, and I think the Western
Reds.
They grabbed a few of the players.
Who were the marquee signings at the Rams?
Kerrod Walters.
Kerrod was there. Yeah.
Noel Goldthorpe.
Yeah, Noel Goldthorpe. Roddy Maybon.
Yeah.
So we had a few, but we probably just needed a few more. Like, we had a very, very young team. Like, it was really young. I was a young kid going across there as well. So I guess, albeit that, and it happened really quickly. So we didn't have a long pre-season. So it started, then it fell apart, then it came back together again. But I honestly believe that it would have kicked if they persisted at it.
Mate, we were lucky one day. It was right at semi-final times in '98. We played just at Newcastle. You were beating us 22-0 at half time.
Yeah.
And you blokes got a couple of injuries, and we actually clawed our way back and won. But I remember coming off the field going, Jesus, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. Well, that's where if you have your senior players, that those guys can guide you through. Those times, and I guess we lacked a little bit of that. Being able to sort of ice games at times.
Is there still hope now for it? Do you think an Adelaide team? Like, I know they're talking about bringing more expanding the game even more. Is Adelaide a spot you reckon the game could go to now?
Oh, I think they could. There's probably a few other areas in Australia that I'd probably have a look at. But I think it definitely, in time, it could definitely make a mark there, because there was a massive following. I mean, our first few games, mate, we were getting 15 to 20,000. Like, it was unbelievable.
It was.
Like, we had at the Adelaide Oval, and and then they ended up moving to Hindmarsh Stadium, I think it was. And they were packing it out. So there's definitely potential.
Some places they don't know what rugby league is, but they just enjoy live sport. Melbourne's a little bit like that.
Yeah, well, that's Adelaide. Adelaide loves their sport. They had the Formula One, and they reckon it was the most incredible Formula One. But there's not a whole heap to do over there, so they get behind their sporting teams.
You don't realise you and Jack have grown up in an era where, to a certain extent, sport's been homogenised across Australia. Even though one's more dominant. When I first went down to Melbourne in the early '90s, it was like going to a different planet. It was a different country, culturally, everything, but particularly sport. Like, honestly, I don't think, basically, if you mention rugby league, you may as well be talking about lacrosse. But just hanging in there, Reeves and all the stuff they did has changed it.
Well, they had good people to start too, which got into the business world, the high end of Melbourne, and that then created the swell. But you are right, Matty. I remember getting off the plane down there when I was an assistant coach, and mate, no one would know you. Like, you walk past and they'd have no idea what rugby league was.
Which is not the worst thing as for an NRL club, because
it's not too bad.
Got away with
you used to be able to enjoy yourselves.
Talk about that, things they did to sort of promote it. In that first season, when we went down to play them, they're like, this is the warm-up area. This is where we went the day before. And we're like, what? And what it was like an indoor cricket pitch. And next minute, and there was a piece of glass, and there was all these people having a meal. So all the corporates would sit and watch you warm up. And we said, we're not doing that. So we found out there was an oval, which we thought was about 100 metres away, like at Richmond's old ground. So we went and warmed up there. And once we got taped and warmed up there, we realised it was 2 k's away, right? And, mate, they had to delay kick-off because it took us that long to get to the ground. We were walking through parks with our gear on in the dark.
Matt, we had Cameron Serrato on last week. We asked him the same question. I wanted to ask you, how would you have coached yourself?
That's a really good question, Coop. I like to get a lot off a coach. I really enjoyed, I've got a fascination about the game of a coach, so I want to know the ins and outs of every single position and, what the far centre might be doing or the far half might be doing. So I guess for myself personally, I wanted a coach to actually give me as much as they could. And then, I'd be able to dissect that, and I'd love to have the conversations with a coach and pull the game apart. And, because one thing I have learned over the years is that, the greatest players can see further ahead than where the game is currently right now. So, and that's knowledge. That's a player understanding that the long part of the game, playing the long game, because that's what pressure brings. And so being able to understand the game at a higher level was something there that I'd definitely I enjoyed doing that with coaches, and I enjoyed doing that with the players that I obviously landed with at Canberra. I mean, I used to pester them and ask them about questions because I wanted their knowledge. I didn't know at the age of 18, 19 when I was sort of playing with those guys that it had helped me down the track as a coach. I thought I'd always be a player, but that has helped me immensely.
It's funny you say that the best players look ahead and like see where the game's going before anyone else. I remember when I was at Melbourne. Billy Slater and Cameron Smith went. A lot of clubs now, people that don't know, do a lot of things in the preseason, like conditioning games, which is like a lot of sort of fast-paced fitness games, similar to the rules of rugby league, but they just speed the intensity up to make the game seem slower when you're playing it. But they had different rules to make it harder, like when you're training. And those two, not just, it shows talent isn't just the best thing, but they would find loopholes in the actual rules that Craig Bellamy would create for the games to make it easier for themselves and to get away with
like chicken wings and things like that.
No wrestling.
What are you talking about?
But it's the same thing in the game. Like the amount of rules that actually got changed because of Slatsy and Smithy in the NRL, because they'd find small loopholes that the referees wouldn't even think about. Like,
well, they'd be understanding momentum, Coop. So the momentum you have in a game of rugby league's the key, isn't it? The quicker the game, the quicker the pressure you're putting on the opposition. So you're coming up with ways where you can actually get a quicker ruck. So that's the detail that those players, I was fortunate to run around behind them as a coach through the years where those guys were developing, and mate, it was incredible just to watch the development of those players. And Matty, you came down obviously and spent a fair bit of time creating little plays that would help those players, and that's something there. I guess with the coaching now that I do, I look at a player and look at his talents and go, well, what can I actually utilise from his talents that's going to then help connect all the other players together. And that's something there when I was running around out the back of those boys where, mate, they'd be teeing off on someone in 5 minutes. But what they'd be doing is they'd be setting him up for 5 minutes, make sure that he was in 2 or 3 more tackles than what most players are. Then all of a sudden they see the fatigue, and then they'd go, right, now we've got our play. So those things that you're talking about are what the great players are doing all the time, is when they're pulling apart someone and you don't even know it, but in about 10 minutes' time, you know what, they're going to get you.
Mate, so, Madge, with your coaching career, you're with Matty Elliott as assistant there at Canberra. Then made a fist of it there. You were with Bellyache with Country Origin. Remember, we're both in that Country Origin camp, and then you go off to Melbourne. Yep. I remember going to Melbourne for the first time, and all these guys now, of course, have household names, but they were just young guys at the time.
Oh, they were kids, weren't they?
And I remember going down and watching, and a bloke said, "How do you reckon they'll go?" And I said, "I think this team," I said, "they are unbelievable what is about to happen." Did you get the same sense when you walked in there?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, when I walked in there, one thing that really probably resonated with sort of where I'd come from and moved down to Melbourne was the amount of chatter that they talked about winning competitions. So that was part of the fabric of the organisation, is that there was an expectation that they won competitions. So that hit me right between the eyes, because it took me back, I guess, from the early days in the 90s where I was hanging around these unbelievable players, some of the best that's played the game, that's all they spoke about. They spoke about that. So I guess that's something there that I've definitely felt throughout the coaching, is that the group of players, and they're men. You've got to remember, they're, as much as we call them kids, they're men.
Yep.
And if they choose to go on the path, mate, you could sense down there that there was an expectation about how we go about things, how we achieve, and what we're going to do.
What a great grounding for you, Madge, that when you first go to that 2006 season, is that you have to do the pre-season, because Bellyache was away as assistant coach with the Australian side with Ricky. So you go in there, it was yourself and like Steve Kearney, and you were running.
It was Dean Lance to start, and Steve came in the following year, but I'll never forget, I think Bellyache went off to an Australian tour.
Yes, he did.
He tends to not come in till after Christmas. But
sunbaking in Fiji or something.
He's doing something like that. But he said, I'll see you in a month's time. And I literally landed the joint. I'm thinking, well, what's this all about? So then all of a sudden it was my opportunity to jump in and start coaching these players, and Matty Guy, Robbie Kearns, and great Scotty Hill. There was a great group of players down there, and they enjoyed themselves, but they also trained really hard, and it sort of was something there that I really...
Do you remember, Madge, there was an awkward moment, because I went in there and I was coaching Cooper, Crowe, and then I went, so we went and started doing a bit of stuff, and we started looking, and one thing that struck me was that flat attack was a dirty word because they traditionally played flat, and then the game had changed, and everyone was like, flat attack, get out of there. I remember going there, and they were sort of playing Bronco ball a bit, weren't they? They were getting deep and running on. And me and Madge and I were talking, and we said, mate, they should be playing flatter. Get up there and just, lots of different, bodies in motion. Don't give them thinking time. Get on top of them, man. I remember Dean Lance saying to me, and you going, Billy, he won't like this. He won't like this. And I said to Madge, what do you reckon? He said, mate, when he sees the results, he'll be fine. So he comes in first training session, and he sits down, and we're showing him just some of the clips. He goes, what the fuck's this? Right? And we said, listen, Madge showed a clip. This is what we were doing before. This is how we're playing now. Look at the difference. And literally, this is what he did. He went, sweet, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and that was something there that just changed the game, didn't it, man?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we sat down and talked about how does the 9 change, and obviously having someone like a Cameron Smith and the past players that we looked at, and Smithy's coming out and isolating markers, and then they're jumping over the ad line, and I'll take you back to that. Is that I do remember I was sitting there in the office prior to we actually got into that conversation with Bellyache, and he was spluttering and all the rest of it that comes out of Bellyache, and I said, oh, look, mate, let's just get Matty down because I needed a little bit of weight of numbers. So it was 2 on 1 rather than me just going, here, this is what we're doing. But to his credit, he bought straight into it, didn't he? And I remember when Smithy started jumping over the ad line trying to catch the markers, and he went off to the Origin campaign. And I can't remember exactly which year it was, but I remember him coming back going, Madge, I can't do this in the Origin because a lot of players weren't used to getting it over the ad line. I said, just persist at it, Smithy, because it'll come. And then I remember, I think he came back and said, mate, Big Petro, he's jumping over the ad line now. And so, from a player that was getting it off the back fence, the game started to evolve, and then that's when you obviously started adding your Coopers and your Billies to it, and we had a lot of fun there with the various players that we were able to come up with.
And you go down, and we just throw hats out. ABC at the side of the ruck and teach him to do bodies in motion. Don't miss the kick. Now, the reason we had to do that is that Cooper went into halfback and he wasn't a natural halfback. So if you'd have traditionally played traditional football and say, Cook, just get out there and push him around the park, it would have been, he wasn't ready for that. So basically the focal point had to be Smith. And so it was make everyone nice and flat, bodies in motion, don't give them time to recognise the play. Yeah,
oh, definitely. I mean, to Cooper's credit, mate, he built himself, didn't he? Off all the different drills that you spent time at and we all spent time at. And I think he was sort of going to be a lock at one stage. He might have been a centre. I remember Matty Orford had signed with Manly and he was moving on. And I remember Bellyache sitting there thinking, well, we don't have a halfback. And then Bellyache basically said, well, let's give Coops a go and we'll see where it goes. And he basically built himself, even his
brick
kicking,
by brick.
Like we brought in biomechanists and all sorts of different people to come in and help him out, but he just worked. But I think that was the nature of what that club represented, and it still obviously represents that. It's you put the work in, you get a reward, and it's no different to any successful club. If they're prepared to do the work, mate, they'll get rewarded somewhere.
The knock on Melbourne was always that once the big three goes, they were going to fall off a cliff, and they've shown that the club itself and the environment development they've had, it's more than just the big three. I wanted to ask you, as a coach who left Melbourne as an assistant and went on to other clubs, how hard is it to replicate that kind of environment at other clubs?
Coop, I'll give you an example of what I saw in their last game. The attention to detail, I reckon, that's been passed down by players to players is something there that people don't recognise. So there was a play in the game on the weekend where Munster, the ball was placed on the left edge, right over on the sideline. Munster's caught the ball, but he's looked in and he played right in really deep, and then they played to the outside and scored in the corner. And everyone goes, oh, they shifted the ball. But what Munster did, as he went and squared up, he literally stopped the defensive line. So then all of a sudden there's a whole new look. But that attention to detail that he does at that moment in time helps his teammates out here. So that's what people don't really pick up on, is the art of being able to set teams up by what you do. And that, to me, is something there that if you can create that within your organisation, and that's the little detail. And so when you're talking about trying to build an organisation to the highs of that, when it's being passed down continually through generations or through the next players, that's where you can find yourself getting that. But you've got to have the players that are willing to set the tone at the time, and that's the expectation of the club. It's what goes on in the front office, above you, and the hierarchy, everything. It all takes, everyone is involved. Like the Origin series that we just went through, it was the organisation that won that. And I mean that by, from the board all the way through. Everyone's got to be aligned. And then I look at that one little player that Munster did, and I go, well, there's a reasons why he's buying into that, because everyone's buying into where they want to go. And so I look at that and I just go, well, mate, that's what a club represents. The little detail of what he did in that one play, they score in the corner, and they wonder why they're one of the best teams for such a long period of time.
Isn't it like you can have an assistant, Madge? Right, you can sit there and he can listen to everything you say. But it's like Chinese whispers. Yeah. People that want to totally emulate someone, they go away and they just... Well, Jack and I were talking about this the other day, about rugby league and tactics and little thing. We walked over to a brick wall and I said, it's not the bricks, it's that stuff in between. It's the subtlety. It ain't the bricks, it's the mortar. Yeah, and that's what we talked about there. Munster, score on the far corner, it's just a little subtlety he does in front. Well,
it's the character of the person. Like, I've been able to work with Jerome Hughes.
Oh, wow.
And, like, the evolution of Jerome, but I've been able to see him work every day when we've been away in campaigns, and it's not just his game, it's his leadership, it's taking control. And, to me, he's up there with one of the best players in the game at this present moment. And if he was in Sydney, he would probably be classed as one of the best players. He'd be in the Cleary, he'd be in the Cleary bracket. Yeah. The fact that he's not in the Origin arena, you don't get as much publicity, you don't get all the hype around your game. But you go back over the last 4 or 5 years, well, mate, he's the main star. And he's the one that's driving those little moments in a game that builds pressure, which is your kicks, or he has a decision to run it. And he did one on the weekend where I think he ended up running on last play, and they ended up going down the sideline and scoring a try. And everyone goes, oh, geez, that's a good play. But he's the one that makes the decisions.
So, Madge, you're at Melbourne, an organisation that's got so much momentum going, understands the mortar, not the bricks. And then you get a Wigan. Yeah. Right. And Wigan, for people that don't know, Wigan were basically like the St George back in the day in England. Won multiple competitions in a row. The complete powerhouse. They'd lost their way a little bit. But big club and a lot of pressure. So you're at a club like Melbourne that understands all these things, and then you go to Wigan. Yeah. What was Wigan like? What was your initial impressions?
I thought, what have I walked into here? But it was a massive club. Actually, no, I'll say that differently. I actually was that excited about being a head coach. I thought, here's my opportunity, and I just went to work. I literally, I went over there. I was over there on my own for 3 months because the family had to come over later, and I literally just every day I was up in there at early hours, leaving late. But what I did, I had a playing group that really bought in, and I've got a great story about Piggy Riddell, Mark Riddell, where he was a bit larger than life when he first arrived, and he wasn't real keen on the training side of things. So I had to whip old Piggy into gear, and we had a few headbutts along the way. But someone like a Piggy Riddell, like I had a moment with him when he was lead, because he retired that year, and we got the competition. We had our presentation night. And I'll never forget standing with Piggy, and we had a schooner in our hand and just saying, mate, well done and good luck and all that sort of stuff. And he had the ring on his finger, and he goes, Madge, this is the best. And I remember him saying something. He goes, I wish at some stages I probably trained like we have here, and we've been able to create what we have, because who knows what my career could have looked like. So the circumstances of where you end up plays a massive part. But that was also then too, like Sean O'Loughlin, Andy Coley. I had these more senior players. Well, Lockers probably wasn't as old at the time, but I had a good senior group that led the way, and they were ready to win. I landed at the time where they'd sort of probably been thereabouts at times and bumbled around, and because they got super fit, mate, they literally, from game one, they just destroyed everyone. And, I brought a little bit of the Melbourne way across, I guess.
It's funny, our dear mate...
Brian Carney.
Yeah.
Phil Bailey.
Phil Bailey, he ran that first year Bales. Yeah. He told me a funny story when you just had the camp, right? And everyone's busting their backside, really working hard. Yeah. And Piggy wasn't used to it, Piggy Riddell. And Piggy's going, I can't do it, Madge. And you're going... Mate, I'm telling you, Piggy, you get out there and he's going, my back's seized up. Caesar salad. Caesar salad.
I never forget that one. We obviously had a moment, Piggy and myself. And I remember looking over and all the English players are there thinking, what's he going to do to, obviously, one of the fellow Australians that are there. And I said, come on, mate, you either get out there or you know what? And he went, you know what? So he ended up doing a bit extras for a period of time. And I think he went from about 105 kilo down to about 95.
Yeah, wow.
But it just transformed his game. And he was a major part of helping build the game and getting the English guys to understand various ways of doing things. So, but yeah, it was a great time. The Wigan people were the best. You know, we obviously had success in the first year, and what a town! Like that town just goes off, mate. When their team's winning, mate, they get right behind it.
It's awesome.
I remember we did a derby. We played against St Helens on. So you play on the Friday. It's over the Easter. You play on the Friday and the Monday. So on the Friday we played St Helens. We were behind most of the game. We literally won in, I reckon, the last 2 seconds of the game. Liam Farrell crosses, scores a try, and mate, it was like a rock concert. Mate, the stadium was packed, and where you stand over there as a coach and get right up the top, I literally sat for half an hour and just listened to the crowd sing. Mate, it was the most incredible moment of just listening to this town just going off, because I could feel the team was really starting to roll. So once that momentum got going, obviously, boom, off she went.
Hey, Madge, you talk about Piggy Riddell then, somebody who probably isn't known for his training hard, more of an on-the-field kind of guy. How do you as a coach, because you are renowned for being a hard-working coach, you drive your players hard, you make them work hard, and they reap the rewards at the end. How have you had to manage some players who probably don't respond well to that coaching style?
I mean, as much as I'm hard, Kev, I tend to work with them, and I just share with them about, well, if you're going to get to here, here's where you can get to as a player. You know, and I can talk about that off many different walks of what I've done as a coach. So it really becomes a decision for the player. You know, and if they don't get there, well, we're not going to have success. So, yeah, and they're men. You know, so when I'm talking to them as men and going, well, you know, this is what it's going to take to get this team successful. So we need to get to in and around this area of part. And someone like Piggy, mate, he bought in. Like, you know, it took time, and I was patient with him because I knew you just don't lose weight overnight, and you can't just get super fit overnight. So we over periods of time, I work with using Piggy as an example. By halfway through the season, you know, I had to work my way through to get him to where I wanted to get him to. But he was outstanding. So, and that he believed in that. You know, he started to really see the rewards. So I guess it's not so much about trying to be hard on someone. It's about trying to take someone on the journey to go, well, mate, here's an opportunity for you to be successful. It's in your hands. You know, there's plenty of people lining up to jump into the shoes of players running around, and you know, and if you're willing to get fit and healthy and do the right thing, well, mate, winning a grand final, and like the story we just told, like I get to share that with Piggy all the time. We get on the radio and have a laugh about it, and you know, I know all the stories, and he knows all the stories of what we went through. Mate, we had some challenges, but it was also too. Now he's a great mate of mine.
Madge, okay, so let's talk about Souths.
Yeah.
You've been lucky because you said you're in a football mad city like Wigan, and then you go to South Sydney, which incredible supporter base. So good. Madge, you could walk on Mercury tomorrow. First man to walk on Mercury, but primarily you're the bloke who broke the duck. First competition since 71. Yeah. When you go into Souths, what was Souths like?
Big club, massive club. As soon as I landed, I felt the enormity of it, and I was, you know, on a boat with a board, and you know, obviously meeting people like Russell Crowe, and you know, Beat Holmes at court, and so there's all this hype around obviously South, and you know, I've grown up obviously understanding what South is all about, but I always saw South as a bit of a bumbling old club because of just, you know, my age bracket of where I was coming through. But the one thing I did when I first landed was I wanted to know what the fabric of the organisation was, and I guess, you know, over the years I saw where it was challenged, and I thought, well, how do I find out about this? And it was all the old boys. So even yesterday I was actually with a few of the old boys. Yeah, so I went and met George Piggins. You know, I wanted to know, you know, albeit that there was, you know, what was going on in the background, but I just wanted to know what the fabric of and then I met Bobby McCarthy, Johnny Sattler, Ronnie Coote, Mike Cleary, and I could just go on name after name, and I wanted to get their thoughts on what they saw the club as and what they felt when they were successful at the club, and it was incredible. It was something that I take now into what I do, is that, you know, when you're wanting to take someone towards something, well, look back in history, and if the history's there, well, those old boys just talked about what that club meant, so it gave me a real good sense of what that area was, and then, Yeah, well, off to where we went. And then, I landed with some good people at the club, like Michael Crocker. I'd had a relationship with Croc. Greggy Inglis was there. So I had a relationship with those guys, and I'd actually had phone calls with those boys before I came back. And I had someone like Sam Burgess coming through underneath, so he was still a young pup too. So he was being guided by a few of the guys in front of him. Croc was an unbelievable trainer, like incredible. He also probably enjoyed his social side at times. But,
work hard, play hard.
But he was coming through that era. Like I remember Croc walking out onto the field. He could not walk. Like he literally couldn't get out onto the training field. And I'd walk past thinking, I wonder whether a Croc's going to train today. Mate, as soon as he crossed the white line, mate, he was just a completely different person. So when Croc was doing that, I had all these young blokes. I'd look at them and, mate, if they're feeling sorry for themselves, I'd just go, have a look at that. And that, mate, literally just changed the way we trained. And, and then I was able to bring someone like Matt King back. So Matt King had understood the past of obviously the clubs he'd been at that had been good. And so those guys helped develop the training ethic. And then, I then went down and looked through the club. And, at some stage, you're going to bring these young kids through. So I went down to the juniors, and there was a kid, Dylan Walker, Alex Johnson, Kyle Turner. These great young players that were just young kids. They were literally rolling around in the juniors, and I thought, if I can upskill these younger kids, well, we're going to get one of these coming through because they were talented. You could see the talent, but they weren't probably as fit as what I would have liked.
They got
them.
talent in spades out there, don't they?
Well, mate,
Suoliti, Angus Crichton.
Madge, remember you used to bring, you brought Dylan over, Dylan Walker, Luke Keary, all those blokes.
Sat in your lounge room.
Yeah,
Mate,
that's
we
it.
did.
And it's funny with Luke, because I remember with Luke, when you brought him over, he doesn't get, like, he was express fast. So again, talking about playing flat, you had to, with Luke, go slow up. They can't keep up with it. He was that quick. But the first two sessions when he came over, at the end of the second session, I'm walking to the car and I'm talking to Luke and I'm going, listen, John, blah, blah, blah. And as he put his boots in the car, he turned and said, oh, mate, can I just say one thing to you? I said, yeah. And I'm thinking he might say, oh, mate, that was unbelievable, And I'm thinking, yeah, mate, go for it. He goes, my name's Luke, not John. I called him John for like two sessions worth. John, think about this. I said, mate, you should have fucking told me, for God's sake. But those blokes, like,
I'd helped him.
But that match, like, for you to coach that club, it's such a great club. Like, a woman said to me yesterday, she goes, oh, what team do you support? And I thought, silly question. I played so long at Newcastle, but it sounds bad. It's like I'm incriminating myself here. But the first club that came to mind was Souths. And I said to her, Newcastle, but also Souths. What's my tie to Souths? Well, Jack had a bit of time there, but I just love the club. It's a very, very special club.
Well, everyone's at that time, it was like their second club. They'd been booted out. They'd come back. They had the march. It was just like this incredible story of a club that had been on its knees, it found its way back, and then it was climbing. And I reckon over time, everyone could see it was just slowly getting itself together, and and there was changes, and there was various fights, I guess, or whatever you call it, in the background to get them to where they got to, and. And I remember I was over in Wigan, and mate, I didn't have a halfback. I had to decide, was it going to be Adam Reynolds or Ryan Carr, and and then I landed on someone like a John Sutton. Like John Sutton, mate, he's probably one of the smartest players I've coached. Like just how he could understand and control a game, and I guess the environment that you land in sometimes creates your path. And I said to John, mate, we've got a chance here where we can really do something. When I got back, and to his credit, he knuckled down, and I can't remember a day where John didn't train. Albeit he might have been busted, he was one of those players that just got out on the training park and showed to these younger players what it's going to take. And he had to learn that a little bit too, because he hadn't been sort of probably in an environment where we went pretty hard early to create the establishment of where we were going to be and what we were going to be as a club.
You told me once about Saturday. This amazed me that he would almost card count on the field. So what he'd do, he'd look, and he could say to Madge, mate, the edge back rower, mate, he's made about 25 tackles in the first half. This bloke's made Like he could stand on the field and card count and know who was starting fatigue.
Yeah. I mean, he could look across the line and go, that's where we've got to go. I remember doing meetings and, Sato would go, hang on, mate, let's just go back here a little bit. Can we have a crack at this? I go, mate, that's exactly what we're going to do. Because he could sense and feel that. And that's what we were talking about before, Coops, where the best players can sense what's going to play out by what they're going to create and how they're going to do things. And, Sut was a very quiet, I suppose, leader, but inside the change room, he held court. So everyone asked me, well, why would you give John Sutton the captaincy? I said, mate, I get to see him every day in and around this group of players. And we had like Sam and we had these big name players, Greg, and, but what Sutto was, he was just a calming effect amongst all those, because, those guys tend to live in a different world outside, in Sydney. And Sut was just that quiet bloke that just went around. He was like the glue. So it was nice to see him hold the trophy up there the way he did, and because he's true and through South Sydney man.
One of the things that really impressed me about the club match was that when it was announced that you were being appointed, I got a phone call from a bloke who was a big identity in Maroubra. Always been a South fan. He said, mate, can we catch up? And I was like, yeah, no worries. I was thinking, do I owe anyone money?
Which you did.
There's a bit going on there.
Which I did, well, of course. I just don't pay people back. Pensioners. People with problems. But he said, do you want to go? I said, yeah. So we went and caught up, and he said, do you know Madge? I said, no, Madge well. Yeah. And he handed a piece of paper to me, and he wrote on the piece of paper a lot of the guys that had problems. Varying problems, and he said, tell Madge this. So I rung you and said, mate, this bloke's tipped me off. Yeah, this guy's got a problem with this guy, blah, blah, blah. And you went in, but for me, for a guy to do that, to almost grass up his mates, knowing it would be for the betterment of the team, but also them, I think that says a lot about the area.
Yeah. Oh, look, it was an interesting area when I first moved in there, and look, I actually literally moved into Maroubra. I was in that area, so I wanted to embody what was going on around the place. And when I turned up in 2012, look, to be honest, like a lot of the fans, they were just literally living in hope. It was, I hope our team and will be successful. And we used to have people coming past saying, "Man, it's been 41 years," and in that first year, to the players' credit and the staff's credit, they jumped from basically being outside the finals to being one game away from, being in a grand final. Poor old Renault tore his hamstring. It still rings a bell. Oh, geez, that was a tough day. But because we were just starting to get back into the game. But the area itself really sort of had that hope. But once all of a sudden they leapt into the next level where they were one game away, people started going, actually, we were marching, and now all of a sudden we're one game away. So the whole district and the area, they literally changed. You could feel it within the community, and so that was really enjoyable to be a part of. And then obviously we ticked into the following year, and mate, I still remember we one game away again. Manly toppled us. We were in control. We had a try scored right before half time, and I could sense that even at half time they weren't quite ready for whatever reason, when you can look back at things, and we missed that one. But going into 2014, that club it was ready to go. Albeit we probably had a couple of challenges throughout the year. I remember we played against the Raiders at Homebush. It was the first time we actually got booed off. It was in 2014.
Really?
We ran around 5 or 6. It was incredible. I've just gone, I can't believe this. We've got this unbelievable momentum happening, and then all of a sudden, we didn't play well, and we deserved it. Actually, we were pretty poor. So we had our review, and literally from that review, the senior players took control, and we were just a different team. And we played St George at the Sydney Cricket Ground, blew them away, and I just thought, hey, the boys are back here. So this is we're on a ride now.
Winning that grand final, what was that feeling like in 2014 when the buzzer went off? GI scored that iconic try. The game's won. What was that feeling like for you and for South?
Oh, look, I was just so happy for everyone. I obviously knew the fabric of what the whole club had been through to get to that point. I remember walking around the stadium. I had my family there, and you could look up, and literally there were that many tears in the grandstand. I think because it was more about just the joy of actually doing it. So it was a massive moment for everyone in the area, the people that support it, and it's nice to actually every now and then you walk past and you'll have someone give me a nod, and you know that they're a South supporter.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is special, and you don't have to say anything, but because everyone understands what that place had been through. So it was a great moment to. And obviously, you're climbing to Everest. So we got to Everest, and I look at things now, and you go back and go, well, I probably should have reset and had a look at where we should have taken the place and all that sort of stuff. But that's by the way now, because it's sent me on a great journey with the other stuff I've done.
It must be unbelievable match for you. What a gift to go through and achieve that. You must get like days where you just go, feel a little bit down. I might just drive over to Redfern and walk the street. Yeah. And I imagine if you walk the streets in Redfern, everyone would be going, that bloke, that's what he did. Yeah. That must be the most rewarding thing.
I probably don't really look at it like that, but you do see a lot of people that the great South supporters. They stick. When you and what they've been through, I completely understand what they've been through, the ins and outs, and all the challenges they've had, and to be able to sort of achieve that with such a big iconic club.
Russell's famous for getting, like inspirational people or celebrities in to talk to the boys. Who were some of the ones? Over there? Did you get the Snoop Dogg experience?
No, we didn't get Snoop or Pamela Anderson or anything like that. No, we didn't have any of those. But every now and then we'd get someone sort of through the organisation. But he was great. He respected what I was trying to create there, and I guess young footballers, we've got to achieve before you get to all these other highs. So it's something there that I wanted to make sure that we sort of put into the joint. You got to be humble and all the rest of it, all those words that people use, but because the connections that club has, it's top of the town. You've got a bloke like Russ that can basically get into whatever it is that he wants. And he bought into the way that we wanted to do things through that period of time, and because young men, we can get ahead of ourselves, and it's making sure that you got to do all the hard yards on the field.
You hearing that, Cooper?
He was looking at you when he said that. I swear everyone's got a weird sort of first encounter with Russell, who's been at South. I've heard it from various people. What was your first ever encounter with Russell Crowe? Because he's a quirky kind of character.
I'm not quite sure I can tell the ins and outs of that one, but no. Oh, look, I actually met him. He came to Wigan.
Did he?
That's what was something there that told me a lot about the club. Mate, I had the CEO, the chairman, and Russell all come to Wigan to meet who was going to be the coach. That was something there that was really telling. When I reflect back on it now, he turned up at a little hotel in the middle of nowhere on the outskirts of Wigan. Mate, it wasn't flash, but we sat down and we chatted for probably 2 or 3 hours about where he'd like to see the club go, and I obviously shared my thoughts. And when he shook my hand, he said, "All right, I'll see you when you get back." So it was actually a really good conversation about what he wanted to create for the club, and understanding the history. He was very big on the history of the club, and all those people that we've spoken about, with all the things that they had to go through to get to where they got to, he had a lot of respect for what went on.
Sam Burgess, you spoke about him being young as a leader. I wanted to talk that grand final when he breaks his cheekbone straight off the kickoff with James Graham. How proud were you as a coach at the end of that game, seeing what the pain he put himself through? Because it is a tough injury to get through 80 minutes.
Can I just jump in there for a second?
Go.
What was he like at half time?
Yeah, okay. I'll go back a little bit just on the Sam story, because I think that whole group was able to create what Sam was able to do. What I mean by that was the connection of that group was so tight. They were a really tight unit, and they were going to do anything it took for that organisation. So it became bigger than each individual. So it wasn't about one person. It was about, we just got to achieve for everyone. So then someone like a Sam, an iconic player, he was unreal to coach. He's one of chance of a lifetime to someone to coach. Because if I go back, we played against the Bulldogs. So this is interesting how he got himself into the psyche of being able to do what he did in the grand final. I think James Graham got him in a game, I think it was about around 20 or something or other. He got Sam in the ribs, and he cracked 2 ribs. So at half time, I'll never forget, Sam was sitting right in front of me, and I could see he was in complete agony. And And I'm sort of looking at Sam. I said, "Go on, Sam, up you get." And mate, he looked as though he was going to kill me. He sort of wiggled in his seat and obviously finished my halftime talk. And I saw Sam disappear, and he ducked off to another part of the change room. So I walked over and I said, "Mate, what are you going to do today? You going to go out there and play, or you're going to sort of soft it up and stay inside?" Mate, I took a punt at what I said, and he looked at me, and I thought he was going to kill me. But his eyes just rolled back. He walked outside, and he played one of the best halves I reckon I've seen him play. He had 2 broken ribs. He was in absolute agony. So I look at that, and then I fast forward to, it's just the practice of what he did with his mentality and his body, and I could talk about many of our other players and even Sam with other incidences like that. So when he did his chin, it was just like, righto, we'll play on. Away you go, because of what we'd been through as a group. And to do what he did is just, mate, it's historic. It's it's incredible, and to see that he committed at a really high level in 14. And he really pushed that group to the next levels. The way he did things, and he had to change a little bit about how he was playing the game. He's given away a few too many penalties, and a player at that level, sometimes the mist would rise, and he'd probably tip over, so he had to change himself. So he, as a player, he went down and saw Mick Malthouse, he saw other people, so he went out of his way to learn different things about himself, which then obviously put himself into that situation of winning the comp.
Getting through. Okay, before we move on, you just said something there that sparked a question. Watching that game back, Madge, I didn't really have an appreciation of how tight it was. The final scoreline was no indication. It wasn't until about the 70-minute mark you broke away. Yeah. Watching the game back, I'm going, hey, this is, for nearly all of the game, this is touch and go either way. When Penrith won their first grand final, they go into the sheds, they're behind in 91 by Canberra. And the story is Royce Simmons is standing there, it's his final game. And Gus went, everyone walked past and touched that bloke. And you think about this bloke and what he's done for this club and what it would mean to win this grand final and the way they went and win. The game was so tight. Do you remember what you said at halftime, Madge, or anything that happened at halftime?
Yeah, that's a good one, Matty. I'll tell you what I did. What I do remember is I walked into the change room and Sam was sitting on the seat in the semicircle, because normally they'd grab the player and they'd take him outside and they'd go and try and assess him. Sam wouldn't let the doctors and the physios take him, so he was sitting in the semicircle with the players. I remember looking at Sam and his face was obviously what it was, but every player was looking at Sam. So I didn't really have to say too much. I actually just went, these boys know what they need to do here. And all I just talked about it, you've got to go the long game here, boys. You've got to go to, we've got to get out there and we've got to build it all again. And there was a massive play where I think it might have been Grubby. He rolled it through and Sam literally stuck out his right hand and he picked up a loose ball. We were right on our line. The game could have tipped at that moment. If we ended up getting a back-to-back set, we were under the pump. So the game was on that tipping edge right at that moment in time. So there's plays like that you remember as a coach where the ball stuck in his hand, we got it, we ended up getting down the other end, pressure changes. But at that instance, Canterbury were climbing. They were coming for us. And I'm thinking, this is going to be a big moment of the game here. We were under the pump.
Jack Gibson, one of the great Jack Gibson isms.
Yeah.
He used to say, winning starts in the front office. Without going into too much detail, because I know you don't like to talk about it in hindsight, it shows you what a great job you did, but how difficult were the Tigers? How difficult was that experience?
Look, when I took on the role, I knew what I was walking into, probably not to the degree of the depths and things like that, because you don't know until you really get in there. And I've got to say, that club could be anything. It could be anything. So when it gets going, it'll get going. And I did enjoy my time. Like they're like fans of other clubs because of the historic. Like you got Wests and Balmain, the two historic clubs. You've got people walking the streets that have been following those clubs all their lives. So when you've got that, your influence in and around community and all that, you hear it all the time. Like everywhere I walk, they go, "Oh, geez, I wish that club would get going." Yeah. Because it could be anything. But I guess as you just said, everything's got to align and. To be able to climb to the top of the NRL at the moment, there's only a few clubs that have been sitting around that top end for probably the last 10 years. In Melbourne, Roosters, Penrith, South have been bobbled in and out of there a bit. So there hasn't been too many other clubs that have actually bobbled up. So working your salary cap, working your lists, working your club, how you treat people, all that is the reasons why the top clubs are sitting where they are. And when you're further down the bottom, you've got to try and draw marquee players. So it's a bit of a different challenge. So everyone's got to be swimming in the same direction.
New Zealand 30, Australia 0. Pretty incredible. Where does that result sit in your career in rugby league?
Oh, in par with all the... I had 6 years, and I know we had a little bit of COVID through the period of my time with the Kiwis, but that was a very special time. The Kiwis rolled out of a campaign in 2017 where they probably didn't get to where they wanted to get to, so I was walking into an organisation that was sort of in a bit of a change. We had to change a CEO, change a coach, change a thought pattern about what they were doing, and to the senior players' credit in Jabber Hargreaves, Jesse Bromwich, Sean Johnson, there was a lot of those players. They're probably not quite sure where, this bloke's coming in, he's Australian, where's this going to go? But to their credit, they bought in, and they wanted to have New Zealand as number one, because they don't have the state of origin. They don't have the highs of what I guess the Australian players do, and even someone like the Tongan players and the Samoan players, that they can still play origin. So it is the pinnacle, so you've got to understand that's their pinnacle. So it's everything. So when you get an understanding, I spent a lot of time on the ground over there getting to know the people. I used to enjoy going over to New Zealand and just finding out about culture. I'm an Australian coaching the Kiwis. I need to know the people. It was the most important part for me. And what I learned through the Kiwis and the Maoris and just how they live their lives, I've learned a lot. And I thank the Kiwi players, because I could see them growing every single time we'd come back into a campaign, and I went from sort of probably not talking about beating Australia to saying, well, we can actually do this, and mate, we should beat it. I had some of the best players in the world. It's just that they probably aren't put up in lights like the guys are here. Like
international rugby league, when I heard that result, it was very un-Australian of him, but I went, you beauty, because in my mind, international, and I'm saying to this the state of origin coach, international rugby league must be the pinnacle, in my opinion. It used to be, you play at club level, you get a country origin jersey, you get a state of origin jersey, and mate, if you play good there, you get the Australian jersey. And for whatever reason, that has diminished. But you can, when the Kiwis and the Poms start firing, and what we've seen with Samoa and Tonga, it's just emerging.
Particularly New Zealand, like you said, Matt. Like that is I'm close with a lot of those boys. Obviously, Jerome Hughes, Brandon Smith, but seeing when they go into New Zealand camps, seeing how connected and proud they are to play for their New Zealand heritage, but particularly the Māori boys, they're completely different people when they really connect back to their culture, and I imagine that must be cool.
And the Tongans, I mean, we're starting to see that. So
it's awesome.
We've got to look at the game and go, well, how do we create the international game at a higher level, or put up into that higher level? So then it is a pathway. And look, I'm hoping that we can get a lot of New South Wales players picked in the Australian team. In over the next few weeks, because that's what Origin really was, and you've got to applaud or give those guys that have had success an opportunity. So looking forward to that.
Madge, I know you coach in Origin. That's where your focus is at the moment. Are you keen in the next couple of years to get back into Clubland?
Yeah, definitely, Matty. I'm hungry to win another competition. So
who's your club? Who's your club you're eyeing?
I got a couple. But I've obviously seen what it looks like, when the club's up and running. I've also seen the other end, and I'm well adverse to sort of having a look at a club now to go, I believe that one
is ready to go.
Is ready to go. And if I jump in again, when I jump in again, mate, I'm going to believe that club can win.
Is there any that have? You don't have to name, obviously. You can do the sound of the mascot if you want. But are there any? Are there any that have reached out and just seen if you're interested in the future?
Oh, Coop, I don't. Yeah, I won't sort of delve into that. You talk to a lot of people across the game, and look, at the moment, mate, I'm loving the Origin, but also too, I have a passion each week where, mate, I love the coaching. I literally love enjoying helping grow a young man. Walk into a club, all of a sudden he's playing first grade, then all of a sudden he's playing start of Origin, he might be playing for his country. Like, how good's that? So I do have a passion for being in Clubland.
Is that short Origin period just it's not boring, but it's a sugar hit.
Scratch. Oh, yeah, it's a bit of a scratch for what I like doing.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember, I've been doing this for a long time, Coop. So
Yeah.
the daily stuff, the weekly stuff, I actually get a kick out of. Origin, mate, it is unbelievable. Like, I can't tell you how big it is as a, and you know what it's like. And but if I could stretch that Origin campaign out over 20 weeks, mate, that'd be the best.
Who can win this competition?
At the moment, I sort of see Melbourne in a bit of a box seat. They've got a healthy spine. I think that to me is a really important part where, you look at Penrith and, mate, you can never write them off. Like everyone said that after 1 and they said 2 and then now 3. So, they've got some special players, Penrith, and Nath comes back in and, I was really rapt to see how Jerome Luai went. Jerome's great, mate. Everyone has their own sort of thoughts about players, but to actually have Jerome in the Origin, he's a class player.
He's on the same trajectory. Help me, Madge.
Yeah, that's the one.
You're on the right. You're on the right trajectory.
Okay,
that's good. I was going to have a crack.
Jerome's going that way, but he's very similar to Stephen Crichton.
Yeah.
Watching Crichton come out of State of Origin last year, he went pop, jumped up, and he's kept going. I'm seeing that with Jerome at the moment. Yeah. What was it like coaching Stephen Crichton?
Yeah, he was brilliant. Just on Jerome, it's interesting. Like we've seen a player sit in a certain style, and he's respected that style, so they win comps. And so you've got Nathan, you've got Jerome, and so he's played his part. So I'm really looking forward to sort of seeing him go out into a club and then take control. Because I saw a lot of that within what we did in the Origin space. So, but you've got to practice that. So if you don't get that practice, you can't actually sort of become that. So then you go to someone like Stephen. Look, he was great. He's just a real pro. It's a bit like what I spoke about. Where you land as a young bloke, like I landed with Mal Meninga, Laurie Daly, Ricky Stewart. He's just leading like those players, but he's doing it at a younger age. So that to me is that, where he can go with his career is going to be pretty amazing.
You spoke about Jerome there. Can Penrith win this competition if Nathan doesn't return?
I think it's going to be a challenge for him. Yeah, I do. With respect to the players they've got, but I go back to that grand final last year where they played the Broncos.
Yeah.
I look at that game and I go, righto, they start the game. Penrith put a heap of pressure on the Broncos. So for the first 20 minutes, I think there was 2 or 3 drop balls. They put the pressure on. That came back and rewarded Penrith at the back end of the game. How I say that is that, albeit that the Broncos came at them, those players like a Nathan Cleary, they know that there's that much fatigue that's been put into that opposition team in that first 20 minutes. So he's going at the back end of the game, we're going to have an opportunity here. So the best players can feel that pressure of what's going on through a game. And I would bet my bottom dollar that throughout that game, Nath would have been going, I know that there's a lot more fatigue in the opposition, albeit they've probably jumped us a little bit here, but we will get a chance. And then that little bit of chance comes to the best players, and sure enough, he goes about and does what he does. So when you don't have that player in the biggest game that has the knowledge or the belief around what they can do, that's the differences. And then you look at someone like Melbourne, where they've got Jerome Hughes, Munster, Harry Grant, whatever fullback they want to pick out of all the crew they have down there. Mate, there's the smarts. So that's why I probably say at the moment they're a little bit in the box seat. And then the Roosters, obviously, with what they've gone through now, have got a bit more pressure on themselves.
Just a couple more questions for you, Madge. Who is, everyone's saying Penrith, it's Penrith or Storm. That's what a lot of people saying. Who, in your opinion, has the most, who's the dark horse in there? Is there somebody in there you look at potentially outside the top 4 that you go, that squad, if it all comes together for them, they could do it?
A lot of the other ones worry me, Coop, because they don't defend the way that those 2 top teams are. It's defence when you get into those games. It's like, you look at our Origin campaign. We had 2 players that was the difference. That's what a grand final is. So I look to the teams that are defending at a high level, which could be a Canterbury, but do they have the smarts attack-wise to be able to keep that sort of attack play on? I mean, Canterbury have been outstanding defensively this year. Does that hold them instead? Because you've got to have the other part. So, their spine's going to be challenged when it comes down to the pressure.
Yeah. Madge, to finish with it, this is not really a question to put the button on it, but I think it's through curiosity. It's always it's always not kosher to talk about another person's marriage, but the Broncos and Kevy, you know, and I really feel for Kev at the moment. As a coach, how difficult is success sometimes? And I ask that question because in my mind, I've been in teams that have had success, and then the next year you go off a cliff a little bit. How difficult is it sometimes with a playing group that has great success, and then what happens the following year to get them back on the horse?
It can be a challenge, Matty, and look, I've been through it. I went through it at South. Like, you know, I remember we won in 14. I lost Sam Burgess, Ben Teo, Lottie DeKiri, Bay champion, Joel Reddy. I literally lost all this first grade experience and talent literally going into the next year. I also lost a fair bit of the front office. You know, I had, you know, some people in CEOs, CFOs, they all changed literally leading into the next season. So at the time I thought, no, we'll be right. We'll be fine. We'll just kick on and keep the momentum going. And I remember rolling into the next season, and we got the nines, and I think we ended up getting the World Club Challenge. We beat St Helens, and we got to about round 4. And then I remember Gus, I think he said a comment on one of the commentary. He goes, this team doesn't know how to lose. We literally lost the next 3. But I also lost Adam Reynolds and I lost John Sutton in that same game. So all of a sudden, those 2 players ended up coming out. So I just had this young crew. I had this young group of players that went, right, I've got to rebuild. And, you know, so the art of, you know, making sure that the longevity of your club and all those sorts of things you need to continually talk about.
Do you see the Broncos bouncing back quickly? Do you see that in this group?
I don't know the makings of the club, man. So it's hard to say where you see the club's at. Obviously, they've got plenty of talent.
Yeah.
So
okay, on that, I'll ask you a different question then, Madge. Reece Walsh is such a charismatic, gregarious character. Everywhere he goes, like there's attention. They tell me the Broncos training sessions, it's like Beetle, you know, Walshmania. Everywhere he goes. Pete Bedell, the journo, told me a story the other day. They said after a training session, he walked to his car, and 2 girls had broken into his car and were sitting in the car, refused to get out.
It's like Justin Bieber. That's sweet. He's like a little pop star.
Thanks, Scoot.
If you know who that is, Dad.
Okay. How do you... that is a very difficult scenario for that player, for the coach, and also his teammates. How do you handle that match?
Yeah, GI, Sam Burgess, mate, all the different players that I've coached over my time. You know, there's big names there. It's how you deal with those players in the background, and that's part of being able to find the success when you're that talented. It's actually really good coaching those players, mate. I really get a kick out of, you know, wanting to coach that style of player or that person, because, you know what, you bottle them and you get them right, mate. They're the game changers. Yeah. So yeah, look, I've experienced those type of players, so I actually find that quite easy. I actually really enjoy coaching players at that level. Yeah, right. I mean, I love developing players, but those players that have that incredible innate DNA, or they're the ones that if you get them right, they're amazing people.
Win comps for you.
They do. Yeah.
Thank you, Madge. Mate, that's phenomenal.
Loved
Thank you very
it,
much.
mate.
Thanks for coming into our humble abode.
Always good to catch up.
Place here, boys.
Yeah, it is, mate. We're in the master bedroom right here. Hence the red sheets.
So take your shirt off.
We'll have to use that balcony one day, Matty. We'll have to get out there like your last place around the corner.
Good on you, Madge.
Good on you.
Appreciate it, mate.